BG podcast number 82. We are live. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Can see a lot of the regular faces in the chat. Thank you to everyone for joining and for choosing to spend your Wednesday week, your Wednesday nights with us. I can see there's just about 40 of you already as we're waiting to go live. Lots to discuss tonight as ever. Still, the boxing schedule hasn't really kicked off for 2018, but it's going to get started very soon indeed with Errol Spence versus Lamont Peterson this weekend. I'm pleased to welcome back an old friend to the podcast, actually. Long-time viewers, people who've been tuning into this podcast from the early days will remember one of the original panelists, friend of the channel, Sherry, has returned tonight. Also, we have Irish Tom, who will be joining us. I think he'll hopefully be joining in the next few minutes. Jay, Paul, Jet, all of them may turn up, but they're probably looking more like cameo appearances if they do. So a somewhat depleted panel tonight, but we've got strength in depth here on the BG podcast. So with that in mind, let's bring Sherry back in. Sherry, boxing absolutely booming as we go into 2018, mate.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, Tom, first of all, I'm glad to be back, and it's very exciting to be back on the Boxing Gossip podcast. But yeah, 100%. Look, I mean, just British boxing itself, we've got some, pretty big name value fights, and I think, especially in the last few years, we have British boxing has kind of taken, big jumps forward in terms of the wider scope. And in America, we're getting a lot more credit now. People are, taking the UK seriously in terms of a true boxing, power, if you will. But like I said, this week we've got Lamont Peterson, Errol Spence. That's a great fight. Starting in February, we've got probably 2 or 3 solid months, and it's going to carry on getting better and better from there, isn't it, really?
Definitely. I mean, the schedule from February through till about May, absolutely jam-packed. It starts, well, I guess it kind of starts in earnest this week with Spence Peterson. That's a good fight. But even though the schedule hasn't been booming recently, there's still been so much news. It feels like there's been news breaking every day, new fights being announced, big boxing stories, etc. And it's kind of kept us all entertained. I guess the news at the moment, sorry, is Joshua Parker. Obviously we haven't discussed that one with you on the channel. What are your thoughts ahead of that fight? Is that one you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, as it stands, Joshua is probably, the most UK boxing for sure, and he's definitely behind Canelo as the face of boxing at this point. So every fight Joshua has is going to be something to talk about. But belts for the first time in the UK, they're both undefeated. There's a lot of little facts that, as boxing fans, we're going to take, very, very seriously. What I will say is, I haven't been on the channel for a while, and obviously Joshua Klitschko happened, Joshua Takam happened. Anthony Joshua's come on, pretty well. He's come on leaps and bounds from what he was a few years ago. And the people on the podcast have always been, Tyson Fury guys, and we've kind of been looked at as, they all love Tyson Fury and all that. But the reality is, you have to give Anthony Joshua a bit of credit, a lot of credit for, the win over Klitschko and the way he's handled himself so far. Parker, look, he's good, and I know you've always followed Parker, and I've enjoyed his fights. He's an exciting fighter, fast hands, entertaining. But I think the size difference is a bit too much, if I'm honest. I think we've got super heavyweight against a heavyweight, and I think the pressure's going to get to him because Parker has not stepped out in front of 78,000 or 80,000 fans. I think Joshua, as soon as he really puts his foot down and lets his hands go, I think he's going to get Parker out of there. But I don't think it's going to be an easy fight, but I do think they're the clear winner.
It's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. In terms of the styles and how that will break down, do you think Parker will look to move and dance and be the smaller man against the bigger man, or do you think he might go straight at Joshua and look to take him out?
That's interesting. That's something that I've been kind of like a bit back and forth with myself, and I've been thinking about the fight and how it plays out. I mean, Parker saying, I think even one of your videos, that he's going to come in lighter this time than he has in other fights. So normally when you hear that, you're assuming they're looking to move around the ring a bit more and have a bit more, speed behind them in that sense. I think Parker, if you're going to meet Joshua head on in the ring, I don't think it's a wise move like that, unless you're looking to work your way in, kind of thing. If he works Joshua's body and gets in on the inside like that, But if you just go straight forward and start swinging, don't really see the fight lasting very long, because Joseph Parker hasn't got the best defense, but neither has Joshua in that regard. But I'd definitely say Joshua has more power at this point, proven power anyway. So that wouldn't be wise for Parker. I think move around a bit and tire Joshua out, because that is a pattern we've seen in Joshua fights all the way back to Dillian Whyte. So if Parker can make him work and make him chase him a bit, then the fight does become a bit more interesting. But again, I think one thing people are kind of like confusing on Twitter and a lot of social media things that I've read is that Takam and Parker are two very different fighters. And Takam is a veteran who knows how to do certain things. Parker may be a world champion, but he's a guy he's not someone with the experience of someone like Takam against Povetkin and these sort of big fights. So I think they're two very different fighters stylistically. So we can't really compare the whole the smaller man thing. He is smaller than Joshua, but I think it's a different dynamic altogether. But I just feel that Joshua's going to be a bit too big and a bit too strong. But again, Parker is not someone I'm going to rule out completely. He's a live dog and he's an undefeated champion, so you've got to give him credit.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. If I was in Parker's corner, I'd probably be looking for him to make the second half of the fight. I probably wouldn't be looking for him to gamble too early. I wouldn't want him to come straight at Joshua. I believe Joshua is an absolute juggernaut when he's at his very, very best. But like you say, I do think the biggest weakness in that armour is probably the stamina question. And I don't think he's had too many competitive fights that have still been competitive in the second half of the fight. I mean, there was the Klitschko fight, but in that one, Klitschko was pretty much gassed for several rounds towards the end. So, for me, if Parker can kind of stay in the fight, keep Joshua moving, keep moving in and out of range, I think that's going to be an interesting test for Joshua. I know a lot of the Kiwi fans think that Parker has got a great chin and is highly durable. I'm afraid I think that may well be tested, because I agree with Surrey that the lack of defence could mean he walks onto something. Joshua's got quite good timing, and Parker sometimes has his head straight up in the air and not the best head movement and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. What have you made of the build up to the fight, Surrey?
Yeah, the build-up has been exactly, I think, what you want in this sort of fight. Of course, David Higgins is a character, and he's managed to get the name out there. And that's the whole point. When you're someone who's coming from a smaller country where your fighter isn't well known globally or even in the UK, only hardcore boxing fans would really know about Joseph Parker at this point. So getting his name out there with the whole, what happened at the Huey Fury press conference with him and Peter Fury, that was like a baby step to this in a way. And then now him and his thing about Joshua having a mentally weak and making outlandish comments is what's going to get him noticed. And the way he's handled himself, I think, as a promoter, he's done very well. Joseph Parker said a few things, but Joseph Parker to me seems like just a genuinely nice, humble guy. It's very out of character if he was to start screaming and shouting. I don't really see that with him. But David Higgins has done a good job. I think carry on doing these sort of things. But on him in the press conference bit, you did see David Higgins wasn't expecting that, and he didn't know how to react, and he did change his comments a little bit in front of Joshua and Hearn at that point. See how they go along, but again, Joseph Parker, like I said, he seems like a humble lad. He doesn't seem like someone who's looking to do real trash talk. That's not his style. He's just going to get in the ring and give it a go, really. But Joshua, I feel like he's starting to get you're starting to see a bit of that bad boy Joshua come out in a way. Especially yesterday, some of the comments he came out with in the press conference about, it's going to take more than a human being to stop me. In an arrogant way, I kind of sensed a bit of he's starting to believe his own hype in a way, and that's fine. Say again, sorry.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So there's certain things he did yesterday at the press conference which I thought, okay, he's starting to believe his hype, and he's very, very confident. And to be fair, with what he's accomplished, he has every right to be. But it's just slight little things you're seeing that are getting under his skin. So it'll be very interesting to see how they get on from here.
Totally agree. I've never really been one who's like obsessed about like the psychological element of boxing, and obsessed about is someone getting in someone's head, has someone got a psychological advantage, etc. But there's a lot of people out there thinking that Parker and Higgins have got under Joshua's skin, and there are some signs of that showing. Did you think that element has the potential to be relevant at all in the fight? Do you think that we could see Joshua maybe lose his temper and be sucked into more of a war? You know, I see a lot of people suggesting that online. Or are you kind of the same opinion as myself that by the time two guys get in the ring, you'll be seeing two professional boxers fighting to a set game plan?
Well, I think with Joshua and this whole mental thing, we saw one performance where he let someone get under his skin with Dillian Whyte. So he was obviously a younger fighter, not only as a in terms of age, but as a boxer. So and that fight kind of, it's after that fight we saw a mature Joshua, in the sense that the way he went out against Charles Martin in Brazil and onwards, he's started focusing more on boxing rather than just letting his hands go. Up until that point, he was just letting his hands go and people were getting stopped by the referee. The Dillian Whyte fight, and him, obviously they've got history. I think it's going to work against Parker's team, if anything. I think if Joshua gets a bit annoyed, he's just going to really bust up Joseph Parker, if I'm honest. But it can go two ways. Like you're saying, it can be a hindrance, as it was in the Dillian Whyte fight. But there, he's really wanted to beat him up and get him out of there because they had history. With Parker, it's not that so much. There's still the fact that this guy's an undefeated champion, and this is another step on the road to becoming the first world champion. So there's always going to be risk and reward. So for him, I think Joshua will have more spite in him than what we normally see. The way he starts sticking his tongue out and all that business. He'll have that in him, but I think he's going to be still relatively careful. But at the same time, he's still going to look to put it on Joseph Parker and show him that he is the real heavyweight champion of the world, in his opinion.
Interesting stuff. Yeah. I don't disagree, mate. I don't disagree. I can see Irish Tom has joined us, so let me bring him in, and I'll come back to you in a moment, Seri. But Irish, how you getting on, mate?
Gossip.
Oh, hello, mate. How you doing?
Not too bad. I'm just finishing making me popcorn. Give us a minute.
Oh, wow. Look at the professionalism from Irish. He rocks up 15 minutes late and is then making his popcorn. If he had wages, they would be getting docked even. But sadly, he's only a volunteer. Okay, so lots to discuss tonight. Let me give you guys a bit of a run through of some of the other topics. We're going to continue the Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker build-up with Irish Tom when he comes back onto the channel. In addition to that, we're going to be talking some of the breaking news in the sport today. This kind of bizarre story that David Price versus Alexander Povetkin is a fight that's going to be discussed. That's one that I've got pretty strong thoughts on myself, so I'm going to have some comments on that, and I'm sure the other guys are going to do. We'll ask Seri and Irish Tom about the return of Amir Khan and his comeback opponents. We did discuss that last week on the podcast, but obviously neither of the chaps on tonight were present last week, so we'll talk through that as well. We'll talk through the Frank Warren card on the 10th of February, where the opponents have started to be announced, and that card is starting to become a bit more clear. We'll talk about Errol Spence versus Lamont Peterson, the first real big fight of 2018 that's coming up this weekend, and we'll have a talk through that one as well, and see what the predictions are and see how people rate, or who people rate in that fight. So there you go. Lots to discuss. Irish, if you are ready, let me just see. He says he's back. Irish, can I bring you in?
You can indeed.
Absolutely. Mate, good to have Seri back on the podcast, eh?
I know. I thought there was a boycott on there for a while, It looked bad for you, Sherry. It looked bad.
Yeah. How you doing, Irish?
Not too bad, Sherry. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm very well.
Irish, just before you joined, I don't know if you were listening, but we basically started off by talking about the Parker Joshua build-up. Obviously the fight has now been formally announced. We've had the press conference this weekend. Are you excited for this fight now? Is it a fight that you're looking forward to, or are you typically pessimistic?
Well, I think it's a decent fight. I think it's, two of the top 5 probably heavyweights fighting, so you can't complain too much. I'm not that buzzing for the fight, though. I'm not buzzing for the fight the way I would be with Wilder, because it's less of a 50-50 fight. What do the bookies have it? Is it 9-1?
Yeah, 9-1.
Yeah, so they're giving him as much chance as Dillian Whyte, which I think is a bit too negative. I'd probably make it more like probably make it a 12. I'll probably make it like a 7-1 fight, maybe 8-1. But God, I don't know. Like, I just think AJ is a much superior fighter. All in all, so, and he's got the home. He's the A side, so I think it's all for AJ to lose. I think he's just a better fighter. So it doesn't interest me so much as a fight because I just don't think it's close to 50-50. So that's where I stand on it. Like, I'd much prefer to see Wilder, or maybe even, I don't know, Povetkin was poor in his last fight, but maybe even Povetkin, because Povetkin, I think, hits a lot harder than Joseph Parker.
I think I agree with you there. Yeah. 180 people watching, by the way. Good numbers for us on a Wednesday. If you are watching, please hit the thumbs up button. Only about a third of you have done that, so that will help get even more people on. Tom, a lot of people talking about the antics pre-fight with David Higgins, getting in Joshua's head, all of this talk about Anthony Joshua being dropped in sparring. Joshua himself seemed to refer to the David Price sparring incident in the press conference. I was just saying to Sari that, in my opinion, you can read too much into that. And I think by the time the fight comes around, none of that stuff is really going to make much of a difference. But, what's your take? Do you think this up and the exchanges could potentially lead to a difference in the actual fight?
Well, I think, look at the last fighter who got under his skin. That was Dillian Whyte.
Dillian Whyte, yeah.
It was probably his worst performance. He went out there to knock his head off. And so I do think Joshua has history of losing the rag slightly. I do think when you see him in an interview, like with, say, Coogan on IFL or something like that, sometimes he looks like he's about to lose his temper. He kind of does strike me as somebody who's got a temper, who could go on tilt. So I wouldn't be surprised if it affects him. Mind games, all these sports stars do them because they mightn't work on all the time or with everybody, but on average, it does give an edge. I think if say, for example, if Tyson Fury got back to his prime with his boxing ability, in the build-up to that, I'd say he would just absolutely drive AJ fucking bananas. I think it would have an effect. I think Tyson Fury would just, with his sheer level of illogic statements, self-contradictory bullshit, I think he would just drive fucking, AJ's Mr. Self-Help book charm. I think he might just, make him self-destruct. But so maybe I think Joshua's the type of character it seems it's likely to have an effect on. But whether that's just Joshua, having a very personal dislike for Dillian Whyte, and he was a less experienced fighter, or would he do it again? I think he might have learned his lesson, but it's definitely, I wouldn't write out the psychological element. Just like what you boys were talking last week for an hour about Mike Tyson in his prime and stuff like that. He had beaten half his fighters before they entered the ring. So, it does have effect at the top end.
I agree. That's, it's a fair point, Tom. It's a fair point. I kind of hope that AJ will have learnt from that Dillian Whyte fight. He seems to have matured subsequently, although I would acknowledge that there probably hasn't been a psychological test and bad blood like the Dillian Whyte fight build up. So maybe he could, crack again under the pressure if something was put on to similar levels. For me, though, it does seem like a lot of Higgins's talk was to get the fight and to get the fight on the original terms. And, maybe now the fight's being made, they'll go back to being sort of softly spoken, quiet blokes like they appeared to be at the press conference. Tom, if you were in Parker's corner, I was discussing this with Sari, what would your tactics be? I was saying you would definitely want to take AJ late. You want to get that stamina going for a few rounds. Would you want to move and be on your back foot and make AJ chase, or would you want to go straight at him and try and trade with him? Well,
it's interesting you talked about this. I met a guy who was like a professional kickboxer a few weeks ago. I was at a birthday party, a kid's birthday party, And this guy, hard now, but like 10 years ago, he was an 18-0, like, world class kind of kickboxer guy. And it was interesting. Like, he's an AJ fan, but he was saying, I don't know, I've never heard anybody else saying this now. So let's see what you guys make of it. He was saying that he thinks AJ is very chinny because he thinks that shot that Vladimir Klitschko hit him, he said, wasn't on his chin. And, he says the chin is the one that really gets you knocked down. He said it was on towards the top of his head. And he said, like, that those shots shouldn't really actually have the same effect. They're not, when you take them on the top of your, like on the skull part of your head. I don't know whether it's bullshit or not, but he was saying he thinks that when he gets in with a puncher, again, he'll get knocked out. And I was quite surprised because, I thought he took a very big shot. But when I watched it again, I think he is kind of right. It wasn't like on the chin. It wasn't like, it was a heavy punch, but it wasn't in the sweet spot. What does anybody make of that?
Watch it again, because now you mention it, I can't remember. But my initial instinct was that shot was like a rocket launcher, and it would have knocked out nearly anyone.
But you know what I mean? Like he was specifically talking about where it hit him on the head, and like I'm not a boxer, haven't done it, but it was an interesting point because he was an AJ fan. Gets in with a puncher, he'll be done. I don't think Parker is a very big puncher. But, AJ did get up off that, but I do still think he's vulnerable. I think AJ's a very exciting fighter to watch. He's the most exciting heavyweight to watch, but he's vulnerable. Whether Parker has the thought, look, I don't know. Parker doesn't have great head movement. Like, he nearly got outboxed by Takam when he tried to box him. I think AJ would be a better boxer than Parker. I don't think Parker has a boxing pedigree of AJ. I think AJ's got a superior jab. Is it better?
But Parker can't really turn up looking to outbox AJ, can he? He's not turning up trying to outpoint him. He's got to knock him out, whether that's by landing one big punch or whether that's by taking him late and drowning him. Surely, if you're Parker, you're not looking to stand off and box.
Well, I think the key for Parker in this fight is combination punches. Because, if he lands one shot, he can land 6 shots. And he can bamboozle. That's the type of fighter he is. He's a speed merchant. He can land one good hard shot, and then he can land 6 or 7 shots. Now, whether he wants to try and go all out and do that, I don't know. I just don't see him defensively good enough. And I don't think he's good enough on the back foot to win a boxing match against him. So I'm not sure what his strategy would be. If you ask me, my strategy would be to test AJ's chin and heart and just go 5 rounds for it. Because I think he'll be outboxed. I don't mean to go like kind of crazy, but I mean he should be looking for a high pace, let Joshua gas and put it on him. If you go back and look at that Takam fight, there's in like the 8th or 9th round, somebody tell me the round, where he does put like about a 20-punch combo on him. Does anyone remember that?
What?
I don't know.
Parker to Cam.
Yeah. When he puts like a 15.
8th or 9th round and he just goes mental and throws a huge combination of hooks, right?
Yeah, and I think that's, if I was Parker, that's the kind of, I would look in spots to do that kind of action because, I don't know. I just don't give him much of a chance. I just don't give him much of a chance. He got a good chin. Sorry?
He's got to be close to AJ, has he? He's got to be like inside the pocket, if you like.
Well, he's got short arms. I think you'll have to get into him. Like, I think if AJ keeps it long, it could be an easy night for AJ. Look what Huey Fury did. And AJ hits a lot harder. He'll be able to keep him on the outside a lot easier. AJ's got an excellent jab when he uses it. If AJ is worried about gassing, he should use his jab and become more like Lennox. But I just don't see. I personally, Baron, he really puts a pressure fight on him. But we haven't really seen him put a pressure fight on anybody at the top level. He didn't do it against guy. He didn't do it against Takam. you know, he kind of struggled against Huey to implement it.
He did.
Kajanu
won't be as elusive as Huey, will he?
No, but he'd been punching him a lot fucking harder in the face.
True.
You know? So, you know, it's good to see unification bout. But for me, it's kind of not as bad, but it's like one of these Terence Crawford in Dongo ones for me a bit. The route for him to take him, you know, the other possibility is AJ's a bit shot from the Vladimir Klitschko fight, which I think is slightly a possibility. I don't think he was that good against Takam. A big, hard fight like that, you know, those type of fights, they age people. So maybe we've seen the best of AJ.
I don't think that is a possibility because I think that Vladimir Klitschko fight, there was only 1 or 2 rounds in that were actually hard. And AJ hasn't had hard fights in his career. You know, he's probably had 3 or 4 testing rounds in his entire career. I do think mentally he's a bit scarred from the Klitschko fight in the sense that he knew how vulnerable he was. He knew he could be hurt. And he put himself in a position where he was very, very gassed against a dangerous fighter. And I think against Takam, we saw a lot more restraint from AJ in the sense that he wasn't going all out. He wasn't himself in a position where he could completely empty the gas tank. And it was possibly as a result of that experience from the Klitschko fight. But I don't think that there's a realistic possibility he can be shot, Tom, because, you know, he didn't take that much sustained punishment over that many rounds, surely.
No, I don't mean he's shot, but I just mean that he protected him. And, you know, because you're taking hard shots, and against Klitschko, they're going to be very hard shots. The other thing is I've got to give you some kudos. Gossip, a couple of weeks ago, Sky Sports were David Hay versus Anthony Joshua in the summer in Wembley. Did you see them? Yeah. Good Christ, that's not the fight we're all looking for, is it?
It's got to happen though, Tom. Like, I'm not saying we want it to happen, but it's so obvious, isn't it, to make?
So does that mean that we want Bellew to beat David Hay?
Well, that's a good point, but is there a risk you then get Bellew, Joshua? I don't know. I'd rather see Hay Joshua than Bellew Joshua, because even a David Hay with 1 leg, you know, could potentially find the punch. But, you know, Bellew Joshua, mate, I keep underestimating Bellew. Maybe Bellew's pound for pound #1 and none of us just realise it. I don't know. But
that's Adonis Stevenson.
Adonis Stevenson, yeah. Good stuff. Nearly 200 people watching live. Thanks to everyone who's tuning in. Please hit the thumbs up button, guys. Less than half of you have done that. That will get even more people joining. So be very, very grateful if you could take the time to hit that. Guys, let me take you back to last week's pod agenda, to both of you, to Tom and to Seri. And let me ask you about the massive piece of breaking news we discussed last week. Amir Khan signing with Eddie Hearn. I guess my opening question is, how excited are you at this stage of his career for the return of Amir?
I thought Charity would be on this one like a greyhound after a hare.
I was letting you go first, Irish.
Sherry, so generous. Look, what's to make of it? I don't know. Like, we'll see. Amir could be shot. It could be a James McGill kind of a thing. You know, we'll see what happens. I'm not. Amir hasn't been in a decent fight since. When was Amir last in a good fight? Probably Alexander. Devin Alexander?
Yeah. Alexander.
When is that?
Mate, it must have been 2.5 years, yeah.
You know. So, and what weight is he going to be fighting at?
Welter.
7.
Pardon?
Is he going to be at welterweight?
Yeah.
You know, so he's been looking fairly fat to me in the face and stuff. He
lost a lot of weight on that TV program, you know. He was down to 145 pounds after that.
Seriously?
Seriously, yeah.
Oh, Christ. Well, then he should be fighting at 140. Fuck that.
Yeah, but he's saying he got down to that weight because he was on like a starvation diet and he's lost a lot of muscle. So he says when he goes back into camp, he'll end up putting on weight.
Well, it's just what you want to do, isn't it? We've got Tyson Fury at one stage going fucking 10 stone overweight. And at another stage, we've got Amir Khan and starvation diets. You know, these British fighters, they got it all fucked up.
Yeah, you're spot on. Is this a huge shot in the arm for Matchroom, Tom?
Well, it's certainly a big enough signing, but we'll see. It could be like one of those James DeGale or maybe even Frampton. Frampton could lose, and it could be just one of those kind of post-peak signings. But somebody put out a tweet of all the shows or the headlining fights that Eddie Hearn's put on in the next, like, 2 months or something. And in fairness to Eddie, there's some very good scraps and matches up there. So it looks like having Frank put lighting a fire under his arse is making Eddie make good matchups. Does anybody have a list of what all those good matchups are?
Do you know what? Just the Matchroom ones, Tom? Or
yeah, the Matchroom.
Okay.
It's like the Matchroom in the next 3 months or something. There's a load of really good ones.
Let me read out for you. February the 3rd, Coley Chamberlain, Cheeseman, Carson Jones. I'm not going to give him credit for the World Boxing Super Series, even though guys like Callum Smith are there. Saturday, the 3rd of March, Kell Brook versus Rabchenko. Dave Allen versus Lenroy Thomas. Rematch. 24th of March, Dillian Whyte versus Lucas Brown. 31st of March, AJ versus Joseph Parker. Amir Khan versus TBA. I believe that is 21st of April, although I need to double check that. 5th of May, your favourite Tom, Hay versus Bellew. So yeah, that Brown versus Whyte fight added this week. That's a good fight as well, isn't it?
Whyte. Well, I don't know. I'm not a fan of that fight.
Are you not?
Fan of that fight, no. It does nothing for me. It's two plotters. Right. I don't know, but I don't enjoy watching Dillian Whyte fight. Dillian Whyte, well, I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh on him, but but I think working in the British market, I think Eddie's been forced to make better, and he is making better matchups. But I think you're missing out a few there from what I remember, but off the top of my head.
To be fair though, I know I'm always accused of being the proverbial Eddie Hearn nut hugger, but Isaac Chamberlain versus Lawrence Okoli, Amir Khan's return, and Dillian Whyte versus Lucas Brown, all on Sky Sports rather than pay-per-view. I'm not suggesting any of those are pay-per-view fights, by the way, but what I am saying is those are better quality of fights and bigger names than we were seeing on normal Saturday night shows at the end of last year.
Well, it wouldn't be hard.
It wouldn't.
He's only a 6-0 fighter headlining. And Dillian, Dillian Whyte versus Duman is that's a decent-ish, headline. But, the quality of the free Sky Sports ones have been poor for, the Dillian Whyte one, I suppose I'm being harsh, but I just don't look forward to that. The battle of the drug cheats. It's like, which do you prefer? Do you prefer Osterine or do you prefer whatever it was, hexachloroquine or whatever the hell it was called?
There. What about Amir Khan's comeback opponents, Tom? I've heard Josecito Lopez. I've heard Sammy Vasquez. I've heard Adrian Granados even. What do you make of sort of that sort of level? And I guess as a follow-up question, do you think all roads for Amir Khan lead to Kell Brook now he's with Matchroom? Do you think that's the direction that they will inevitably take him in?
Well, who knows? He's probably not going to go up to 154. Look, that Kell Brook fight, I don't know what Sherry thinks, but like that Amir Khan Kell Brook fight for me is, I don't really care about it. It's like Lennox Lewis versus Mike Tyson that was 10 years too late, except, it's on such a dramatically smaller scale. I'd like to see him against some good British fighter if he's going to be on in England. I'd prefer to see him against someone like, Eggington or somebody. Somebody that's above British level, but Khan should be able to handle. And if he doesn't handle, he should quit. You know, that's the way I look at it. That'd be an exciting matchup of styles.
I hear you. I hear you. Just last question, Iris, before I move on. Sorry. Do you actually see Brook Khan? I know you say you've lost interest in it. Do you actually see it as a competitive fight? Because I'm sure Seri will come and disagree with me in a minute, but I find it very, very hard to make a case for Amir Khan in that fight these days.
Maybe, but you know, like boxing fans, we can be fickle. Like if Khan comes back and puts on a display like he did against Devon Alexander, which was an absolute A+ performance, you know, Brook has ever done. If he can box like that, you know, he can do well. Amir is a nice guy, but you can tell from being in the jungle, not that I watched it, that he hasn't got too much grey matter going on. And, you know, that comes out in his boxing style. He's got all the natural talent, except for his chin. But even maybe his chin wouldn't be too bad if he goddamn, you know, fought in a more intelligent way. He could protect himself. But, you know, that's Amir. I don't know if we'll ever get that fight. Honestly, I'm not up for that fight at all. I really couldn't care less about that fight at this stage. That fight is 3 years out of date.
Yeah, I do agree. It's massively lost its luster. I think 2 or 3 years ago it would have been probably the biggest fight in British boxing, and you know now it does feel about two guys who've passed their peak for me, and who've taken some pretty heavy losses. Let me bring Seri in. Seri, first question I guess is, what was your take on Amir Khan in the jungle? You know, did you watch that, and how do you think he did?
Yeah, I mean, look, Amir Khan is like Irish just said. He's one of those guys who's not like, you know, the brightest guy you'll ever meet. I've interviewed him 2 or 3 times. He's a lovely guy from when I've spoken to him, and he seems like a genuinely nice guy. You know, again, he's not the brightest guy, so he's just you know, just he's a bit just too chilled out, and he's just very open and kind. But in regards to him and his boxing, I mean, I think that signing with Matchroom was a very clever move, considering, you know, the way he was, I'd say, widely liked in I'm a Celebrity. He did pretty well there, and the public will obviously tune in to watch him fight now. The casual punter is what Matchroom is all about, and the casual people are the people that watch these sort of programs. And he's got his name out there again, so it's better for him to capitalize on that and fight in the UK than to go back out to the US again and then just, in essence, waste the publicity that you've gotten off of the program. So in that regard, I think business-wise, I think it's the right decision for now. Seeing him fight 3 times a year will be good, but we have to wait and see if that happens. I mean, he hasn't fought for nearly 2 years by the time he fights again. He fought on May 3rd, I think, was it 2016? He fought on April 21st, so that's 2 years out. The Devon Alexander fight was the last time he actually looked sensational, and that was December 12th, 2014, I think. So that was 3.5 years ago by the time he fights again. So we don't know what he has left. And I think, you know, that Khan's way of talking in interviews is that, you know, oh, I'm only 31, I'm in my peak. I don't think it works like that. I understand the whole athletic peak and age and stuff like that, but Khan's been around for a long time, and he could have very easily, you know, missed his peak in the last 2-3 years the way he's been, you know what I mean? And in regards to the Kell Brook fight and him, it's a fight that I think as boxing fans will still watch and will still enjoy if it gets made, but it's not what it once was, especially with Khan taking the Canelo knockout, which was kind of inevitable now looking back on it, and Brook taking the 2 beatings back-to-back that he's taken. I can guarantee you, and this isn't me picking sides, it's just one of those things where the beatings that Brook took were kind of drawn out, if that makes sense, even though the Golovkin one was 5 rounds, and he had some success, but the point is, the bigger guy did beat him down, and of course Dominic Ingle threw the towel in very cleverly because he would have been on his arse otherwise very soon. So that was a good move. And then the Errol Spence fight, as much as people want to call him a quitter, he showed a lot of heart by staying in there, and he fought back as much as he could, regardless of what people want to say about him quitting. I don't really consider him a quitter. There's limits to all men in all sports, and he did take a very bad beating towards the end of that Errol Spence fight. So Brook is probably damaged in a different way to Khan. Of course, his eye sockets are both, you know, damaged, but they're fixed now. So hopefully that will happen to him again. Amir Khan has taken beatings in the sense that he's been in more wars when he hasn't needed to. Brook didn't really have a choice in those 2 fights. He got drawn into wars because the fighters just overpowered him for different reasons. You know, Golovkin being the bigger guy, and then Errol Spence just unrelenting bodywork, and Kell Brook having to crash down in weight, back-to-back losses. I think psychologically, Kell Brook might not be the same, but it depends on who he fights. But I don't think I'd pick Khan to win that fight. But it all depends on what Brook we see now as well, because it's all good and well saying Brook's bigger and stronger, but we don't know what he's got left as well. So we have to see how he does when he fights. But Amir Khan, from what I've seen, he's always come back well from his losses. Kell Brook, we haven't had the opportunity to see him come back from a loss yet, if that makes sense. We saw him come off of a loss and go straight into another big fight, big payday, etc. We haven't seen, has he got the desire, has he got the hunger to fight this Rabchenko guy in the Sheffield Arena? We don't know. So let's see if he can get up for that and what he can do at 154. But Amir Khan, like I said, it's a big publicity move and shocking for us to see him with Eddie Hearn. But we'll see who he fights. It's all dependent on who he fights, isn't it, really?
What do you think is the right level of comeback opponent? I mean, the names we've been talking about and hearing about, as I say, like Adrian Granados, Sammy Vasquez. Some people have been mentioning names like Adrian Broner. Yeah, if you were in charge of his career, what sort of level would you be pitching him in at?
I think Amir Khan needs to take it easy for one fight. And what I mean by that is not fight someone that's got totally no chance. But, for example, Adrian Granados, I probably wouldn't put him in there with him. Because this guy, he had a very good fight with Adrian Broner and then a very good fight with Sean Porter. And he's competitive in both of them. I wouldn't say he was getting dominated. He's one of those guys, he's very rough and tumble, and he'd jump on Amir Khan's chest the way Lamont Peterson did. I don't know if that's the type of fight you want to walk into straight away off a 2-year layoff. Again, it's going to be similar to what Irish was saying. It could be a James DeGale situation where if you've got a guy who's just unrelenting, non-stop the way Truax was, and if Amir Khan can't quite get off his shots the way he'd like to, then it's not going to end well. So I think probably I've heard rumours of Chris Van Heerden, and I saw it on Instagram. That's not a bad opponent. He's a decent, he's a former, I know IBO isn't a top level world title, but former IBO world champion. He's lost to Errol Spence. There's no shame in that. He could fight him. There's another guy, Samuel Vargas, the guy that lost to Errol Spence, and Danny Garcia. He's a decent fighter as well. Again, they're very, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but they're kind of come-forward fighters that Khan can use back foot against and, outbox for 12 rounds. But I'd go for a slightly, C or B level rather than B plus to A. There's no need for that right now. He needs to rebuild and take it slowly from there.
Yeah, I think that's sensible. And if there are the big fights to come later in the year, whether that's Broner, whether that's Brook, I guess why gamble in the first fight? There's simply no need to. Sorry, we've just been talking about the Matchroom schedule. As you haven't been on for a little while, let me ask you about some of those other fights. Coley Chamberlain, Lucas Brown versus Dillian Whyte. Are these fights that stand out to you? Are these fights that you're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, look, I'm a boxing fan, so for me to see these sort of fights, I'm okay with it. At the end of the day, they're not on box office like Irish said. They're on regular Sky. They aren't the best fights in the world, but the fights that I can, sit down and enjoy. Apparently, neither of them seem to like each other in both fights. The Whyte and Brown one, it's not going to be a boxing match. It's going to be more of a brawl, if you know what I mean. I don't think either of them are very good boxers, if I'm honest. But and it could be a very boring fight with the sloppy the whole way, which I have a feeling it might turn out to be. Dillian Whyte just doesn't seem to be the type of guy who can produce a good fight unless he's got a very good dancing partner, like Chisora and then obviously Joshua. They're very different styles, aren't they, to Lucas Brown? But again, I'm going to tune in to watch it, like most of us will. But I hope it's a good fight. But as of right now, I don't think it will be. I think it will be a fight that has a very good build-up and a lot of back and forth between those two. The gloves are off tomorrow and doing the press conference, so that'll be an interesting watch. But I don't know how fulfilling the fight will be. But the Coley and Chamberlain fight, that's a good fight. We've seen two undefeated young guys test themselves early on in their careers. They're both British as well, so it's always good to see that. I think Coley is buying into his own hype a bit too much. I think he hasn't fought anyone. I know he's only had 6 or 7 fights, but the way he goes on about his power and all this, I think he had a fight recently where he didn't get the guy out of there straight away, did he? So he's getting a bit too excited. I don't see a lot of technical ability from him. It's more just the power side of things. Similar to Deontay Wilder in a way where it's more about that big right hand landing and getting someone out of there rather than boxing to a game plan or showing more to your game. But I think Chamberlain is obviously, we can all agree, he is a better all-round boxer. How well he'll hold up against a big shot from Coley, we'll have to see. But right now, I'd probably lean towards Chamberlain boxing him, but we'll have to see on the night.
Interesting. Okay, Chamberlain pretty substantial underdog. But I think there's a substantial school of thought that he could cause real problems with his boxing. Yeah. Do you have a lean in the Lucas Brown, Dillian Whyte fight, Sherry?
I mean, Lucas Brown, who did he beat? Was it Ruslan Chagayev, wasn't it, when he won the title?
Chagayev's his big win, yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Has he fought since? I think he's had one fight, or?
Yeah, he's had a comeback fight against a guy called Matthew Greer, who's like a career sort of journeyman type.
Okay, fair enough. So again, his last big fight was in March 2016. This is a guy that's not really had a big fight in the last 2 years, is it? So
yeah.
Dillian Whyte has been a bit more active, you can say. I think he's had 4 or 5 fights in that time. But again, I'd say they're both on a similar sort of level, if anything. But I'd like to see Dillian Whyte win. But Lucas Brown, I think, can win the fight. He hits very hard from what we hear in online and stuff. But neither of them are B plus A guys. They're more C plus B minus, aren't they? They're not guys that you're gonna think of in your top 5 heavyweights right now. Maybe not even top 10. We don't know. But it is what it is. It's just one of those fights that's gonna get the hype going rather than the actual fight delivering. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope it does deliver. But I don't think it's a very interesting fight, apart from the fact that they're just gonna hype it up. I don't know what to expect in the ring. That's the thing.
Well, I'm kind of hoping for a Whyte Chisora type fight. I don't think it's going to be the best technical matchup.
Yeah.
I don't think either of them are, devastating athletes or, anything like that. But it could develop into a pretty violent scrap where, technique may not be at a premium, but there's a lot of leather being traded, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what I have to just sit and hope for, isn't it, to see an all-out war. But I don't know if there's going to be a knockout in that fight. They're going to sell it as that. Oh, these two hate each other and bad blood, and there's going to be a knockout to try and get people to watch it. But we'll see. It could just be a sloppy 12-round affair. Could be. But I hope it is an action-packed fight, like you said.
Yeah. Well, the press conference is tomorrow, so we'll have to see how the hype begins. I saw on an interview today that Eddie Hearn paid for business class flights for Lucas Brown, so I'm sure he's hoping for a bit of animosity to come out tomorrow for that investment. Yeah. Let's bring Paul in. Paul, I can see you've joined. How are you getting on, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Sorry, I'm a little bit late joining, but I thought better late than never.
Yeah. How long have you got? Are you with us for the rest of the show, or are you just a cameo, mate?
Potentially, it might only be about 3/4 of an hour, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, so we got you for a fair chunk. Paul, we started the show by talking about the AJ versus Parker build-up. We've then kind of gone over some of like the Khan announcement, the Lucas Brown, Dillian Whyte announcement. Obviously, we kind of discussed, Khan and Parker when we did the podcast last week with you. Jerry and Tom obviously weren't present. But, I guess let's start with Lucas Brown versus Dillian Whyte, mate. What was your take to that announcement, and is that one you're looking forward to?
I actually think it's going to be a pretty good fight, to be honest. It's quite a sort of like clash of styles there, isn't it? I also saw that interview with Lucas Brown you're talking about. He's like quite clearly blaming the second positive test on. I always cringe when I hear guys saying, what was it he said? I just went in looking for a pre-workout supplement and just asked for the best one they had. And I just took it. And that was it. It's like, coming off, you just like kind of been cleared for the clenbuterol thing. And then all of a sudden you just go in and pick something up and just take it. Because it's, I don't know. I think he's kind of taking people for fools by trying to spin that one, to be quite honest. And the fight, I think it's a good fight. I tell you what I was surprised by. I don't know I guess this is the same interview you heard. Lucas Brown said he started aged 30. Did you hear that? He said he actually started fighting at 30. He's like 38 or 39 now.
I didn't hear that, Paul. Maybe because I zoned out. But one thing I do know about Lucas Brown is he has an extensive fighting background outside of boxing. So maybe what it was is that he had done like years of like MMA and kickboxing. He fought at a very, very high level in those disciplines and then only moved to boxing at 30. Maybe that was it?
Well, I don't know. No, I mean, what he said today was that he started combat. I think he had some background in martial arts, kung fu and stuff. But I think he said he started combat, sort of like competitive combat sports at 30. He did MMA for a bit. come up against, I can't remember the name of the guy. He said the guy is now UFC heavyweight champion or something.
Yeah, Daniel Cormier. Yeah.
Daniel Cormier, yeah, and got his ass whooped and realised he wasn't so good at kicks and whatnot, and switched over to boxing. But he seemed to be saying that happened at 30. If that's true, I think that's incredible. That that he's done it. But we've touched on it here in the podcast a few times that it would be surprising to see the sort of like improvements we saw in the Chigayev fight. Without any kind of enhancement. It's only speculation. This is only my opinion, of course, but it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth when it comes to Lucas Brown. I kind of chatted with him a little bit on Twitter. I don't know if you remember, we were going to try and get an interview with him for a bit, and then that kind of like went a little bit sour at one point. I think it's a good fight. I actually think if the two guys are at their best, Lucas Brown will probably win that. I think he's a slightly better fighter. I'm not that big of a Dillian Whyte fan, to be completely honest.
I think if the best ever Lucas Brown turns up, it's better than the best ever Dillian Whyte we've seen. But that best ever Lucas Brown performance is going to be shrouded in doubt for me. I'm a bit like you, Paul. I always like to take people at face value, but when he's saying, yeah, I just walked in and picked up a bit of pre-workout, part of me's very, very, very skeptical when I hear that type of stuff. And,
if that was me and I'd just come off the clenbuterol thing and I'd just been cleared, I would be checking Mars bars. If I fucking ate a Mars bar, I'd check there was nothing dodgy in it. You'd be so on you fucking on guard for stuff like that, especially with supplements and stuff. I just cannot buy that. I cannot buy it.
Yeah, I hear you. And the difficulty is, if you take out that Chigayev performance, the best form you've got of Lucas Brown is, his wins against Rudenko, his wins against Richard Towers, those sort of guys. And based on those performances and based on that level of form, you could easily pick Dillian Whyte to beat him, So it kind of depends just where you rate Lucas Brown. And for me, it's a complete unknown. And there are reasons to question him. He's now 38. Mikey put a comment in the chat a moment ago to say that he's currently 20 stone in terms of a comment he made on social media, that he's 20 stone at the minute. He's been extremely inactive. And he's up against a younger, fresher guy with a lot more momentum, who's the home fighter, and probably going to get a decision if it's a close fight. So, I think there's substantial reason to doubt Lucas Brown, but also enough reason to give him a shot against Dillian Whyte, who does appear to be a beatable fighter.
For sure. One thing I am looking for is just that presser tomorrow. I have a feeling that might. I have a feeling there might be fireworks at that, because one thing he does come across as Lucas Brown is a guy that won't find it easy to back down. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think if Dillian sort of like comes and puts it on him, I think he's going to really struggle to like, he's not the sort of like be the bigger man type of guy, is he? He's a bit of a hothead, Lucas Brown, apparently.
So it seems, yeah. When we're on the subject of press conferences, Paul, what did you make of the Joshua Parker press conference and the associated pre-fight build-up there's been this week?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Joshua Parker press conference, I think it would have been quite boring had it not been for Eddie Hearn calling out, putting it on Higgins, I don't know. AJ seemed a little bit rattled. I mean, a lot of people are writing Parker off. I think this is going to be a competitive fight, and I think it could be a banana skin for AJ. I think I heard you saying a similar thing. I'm reserving judgment on this whole thing until we see what their weights are nearer to the time. Because I think I think if AJ continues to put on weight, if he's anywhere near as heavy as he was for the Takam fight, I think the difference in speed could be key there. Do you know what I mean? But the presser was, one thing I did notice though, I think AJ was saying oh, there's only been 3 occasions. Well, I don't know if anybody else got onto this. Nobody seems to be talking about it. He says, oh, there was the 3 occasions. He listed the 3 occasions in which he'd been dropped. I'm pretty sure somebody can, I'm not completely sure, but I'm pretty sure someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that he has all but admitted to 1 or 2 of the other ones before as well. I seem to remember him pretty much admitting to the Okoli one as well. And yet in the presser, he seemed to be saying, like, it was just those 3.
And the other one to factor in that he didn't mention in the presser as well, and we know this a bit more factually because it's on tape, is the amateur fight against Dillian Whyte.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he seemed to be minimizing it. He seemed to be trying to minimize it and stuff. I just think it's a bad look. I think it's a bad look. Well, so for the first one, I came out of the cells and, you know, like that whole, I just think, I don't know, I think it's a bad look. I'd prefer, look, throughout the time I've been watching boxing, there's always been rumors. Anybody can get dropped, yeah, especially in sparring and stuff. I would much prefer it if he'd have just come out and said, yeah, I got dropped. Like, I'm still a world champion. Like, you're still going to have to drop me. You're still going to have to connect, whatever. But, like, the whole excuses, I don't know. It's like, I didn't really like that too much, to be honest.
Yeah. I must admit, I struggle with the personality that he portrays sometimes. I find him quite dislikable. But to be honest, he's kind of at a level of profile and celebrity now where it doesn't matter. He's going to sell X amount of million pay-per-views anyway.
But the thing is,
I saw an interview go up today with AJ talking about him wanting to go into politics in the future.
Oh, God.
And you just kind of think he's getting a bit far ahead of himself, you know, sometimes. If one thing goes wrong in the next fight, he's going to be, you know.
I know, well, that's the thing. And like, yeah, as you say, like, he's going to, like, this is going to sell out. This event's going to sell out. And that's all very well. But, like, he seems to have much bigger ideas for himself than that. You know, he's talking about, you know, emulating Roger Federer and doing this, that, and the other. And I think, you know, like, he seemed to make quite a big deal of that thing on the top of the building in Dubai and stuff. And it's just like, you know, if you wanna sort of sustain that to get to anywhere near that sort of level, I think he's gonna pick a fucking personality. Like, I think you're gonna have to be real with people. Either play the villain or play the nice guy, but do one or the other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is it. He seems to switch between the two. Sometimes I find him quite likable. Sometimes he bores me to tears.
Yeah.
It's
like in the interview with Coogan, like, you know, the one where he started off by trying to take the piss out of Coogan, like mimic him and that. In that interview, he came across as quite like he was being himself. He came across as quite likable. And then other times it's just like, you're playing a role, man. You know, like this isn't acting. You know, you're not in a movie here. Let's just be ourselves and do what you're best at, which is getting into the ring and fighting. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. Gentlemen, whilst we're on the subject of former Olympians whose chins are being questioned, I have to introduce a story that has caught the imaginations of many, many, many people in the boxing community today, which is a story that was broken on the Sky Sports website, that David Price has accepted terms for a potential clash with Alexander Povetkin on the AJ Parker undercard. Now, I'll go first and I'll give you my take on this. I can understand why Eddie Hearn would want to put the fight on. Povetkin is likely the mandatory for Joshua on the WBA side of the coin. And obviously putting the fight on from Eddie Hearn's perspective means that he can build up Povetkin and make Povetkin look like a very fearsome and very marketable force ahead of his potential future fight with Anthony Joshua. I can also just about understand why David Price takes the fight. I appreciate Price would be a substantial underdog, but in a sense, he's got nothing to lose. And maybe he's not interested in having 10 comeback fights against journeymen. You know, maybe he wants to come back, earn some money, and test himself and see if he's good enough before making a decision as to whether he wants to retire or not. The reason that I'm very skeptical and I think this is key. I actually don't think this fight will happen, is because Alexander Povetkin is a huge money fighter. He has fought for mega purses in his past. He has a history of his backers putting an immense amount of money behind him. Look at the amount of money they put up for Vladimir Klitschko. Look at the amount of money they put up for Deontay Wilder. Both times, and I appreciate the Wilder fight didn't happen, both times Wilder and Klitschko, who are both the A sides in that equation, had to travel to Russia after purse bids to fight Povetkin. Povetkin's already made big money. And at this stage of his career, in his late 30s, do we really think Povetkin is going to want to come over to the UK to fight on an undercard if he doesn't need to? He doesn't really have a history of coming over to the UK or fighting on undercards. And in fact, whenever it's been up in the air, him and his team have showed huge preference to get the fights in Russia, like they did with his overbidding at the Klitschko fight and like they did with the bid on the Deontay Wilder fight. I think I attended the Hayes Chisora fight at Upton Park, and Povetkin was actually supposed to fight on that undercard against Hasim Rahman, but that didn't actually happen. Something scuppered that, and he never ended up coming to the UK to fight. So I'm deeply, deeply skeptical. Look, AJ's going to want huge money. Parker's going to want huge money. Are those two really going to be prepared to sell out the amount of money required to get a fighter like Alexander Povetkin on their undercard? Povetkin is going to want real money. And whilst the story is that Price has accepted that offer, it's very, very easy to accept an offer. And it's very easy for Eddie Hearn to potentially consider Price for a deal if they haven't yet signed up Povetkin. And I'm deeply dubious that Alexander Povetkin is going to want to come to the UK to fight on an undercard. I don't think he needs to. He's already the mandatory challenger. He's got a history of fighting in Russia. And let's face it, he doesn't need the money, and he's got huge earning potential at home. So, yeah, that's my take on it. Obviously, I will throw into the mix that if the fight does happen, clearly David Price is a very, very substantial underdog. I think it's the first time in Price's career he'd actually entered a ring as an underdog. There's the classic line with David Price that he's always got that puncher's chance, but you'd have to back a guy like Povetkin, almost have the ideal style to take out a guy like David Price, in my humble opinion. But let me throw it out to the panel. Guys, what do you make of this one? Do you agree with me that it's unlikely, and how do you see it going if it did happen?
It's the heavyweight fight we've all been waiting for. It's the two top bangers, two top hitters in world boxing. We just had a guy there nearly knocked out the unbeatable Sokolowski.
It's bad, mate. It's bad.
My internet is bad, is it?
Yeah. You've gone proper like Dalek again, mate, I'm afraid.
Is it better now?
Oh, maybe. Yeah, go again.
Well, I'm saying it's the best heavyweight matchup we've all been waiting for. We just had David Price go the distance with Sokolowski, and who did Povetkin go the distance with?
Someone
shit.
Let me box record, because it's going to annoy me that. Let me box record. Povetkin went the distance with Christian Hammer.
With Christian Hammer, and did he go the distance before that as well?
Yes, he went the distance against Rudenko.
So,
and he is now 38.
He is now. Well, look, David Hayes should not be, or David Price should not be getting in the ring with a decent puncher. It's a terrible fight, I think, because Pricey is so British standard. Like, is David Price in the top 10 British heavyweights right now?
Is he in the top 10? Yes, but
like, just name the top 10. We got Chisora,
AJ, Dillian, Whyte, Huey Fury, Chisora. The thing is, Price has got better wins. Who was that?
Daniel Dubois beats him.
Yeah, Daniel Dubois has been fighting cab drivers, though. I mean, Price has performed at a higher level than that.
Doesn't matter. Daniel Dubois beats him. Like Dave Allen.
It's hard though, mate, because Price's best win is probably like Sam Sexton, who's the reigning British champion, and he smashed him up. And guys like Dave Allen, Sexton, Cornish, they're just not operating at that kind of level for me.
What, David Hay?
Yeah, David Hay, yeah. Bellew.
Joe Joyce.
Yeah, Joyce.
You know, he's barely in the top 10 British fighters.
Yeah. Nathan Gorman.
You know, like he's scraping the British top 10. So, and look, David Price shouldn't be fighting. He obviously doesn't enjoy it. It obviously, like, I'm sure he gets some money from it. But this is David Price who came out on Twitter saying that, you know, drug cheats shouldn't be allowed to fight and promoters shouldn't be allowing them putting on cards. And now he's taking the money to fight another heavyweight drug cheat.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. But Tom, this is a romantic sport. David Price goes out and wipes out Alexander Povetkin with that big right hand, does the same to AJ, unifies against Deontay Wilder, and goes down as the greatest heavyweight of a generation.
Yeah, but I just don't think he'd. I don't think he'd beat Deontay Wilder. So I just don't see that happening.
I don't think he'd beat any of them. I remember us all sitting after. I remember after his last fight, us all sitting here and saying, he looks like a guy that is actually properly scared of getting hit on the chin now. He that's how he fights. I don't see this fight getting made. I agree with you, Tom, but I don't see him getting through any of them fights because he fights like a scared fighter, and I don't think he should be in the ring anymore. I think he should hang him up. He won't probably, but if I was like anywhere close to David Price, that's what I'd be saying to him: hang him up, man. Try see if you can get into training. Maybe you can train people. But having said that, he has got that equalizer in the right hand. I think he can. Well, it's quite obvious he can knock out any heavyweight if he lands.
He doesn't even have Paul. He doesn't have that anymore.
Well, we don't know, do we? Because he's
not able to deliver it
to get anywhere near to be able to fucking even try and land it. But I don't think you lose that kind of power. I think your heart might go, and I think his heart's gone, and his balls are probably gone. But I don't think he just lost all that power in the right hand.
No, but he's not able to deliver it, Paul. He doesn't have the system.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's like
Conor McGregor.
I think he can do
the power went, you know. He had it, but he didn't have the delivery system.
Yeah. That's why I said I don't think he can actually beat any of those guys because, as you say, you've got to get yourself in position and fucking make the openings to land. It's not like it's not like it's a cab driver. Povetkin's not going to just stick his chin in the air for him to hit it. Neither is Deontay Wilder at this point. Although to be completely honest, I wouldn't be like super shocked if something like that was to happen with Wilder because Wilder is just so open and so fundamentally bad. I mean, he's got the balance. He's got the balance of like a newborn lamb.
Deontay Wilder would knock out David Price in
probably, but like
not probably.
If you know what you're looking at when you watch boxing, and you look at Deontay Wilder, his fundamentals are awful. They're just awful. He's got the footwork. I don't know. He's got the footwork of Stephen Hawking, to be completely honest. Yeah, and that isn't a guy that you can confidently pick. In any fight, I wouldn't. Even if I was a betting man, I would never put money on Deontay Wilder because he's an accident waiting to happen. I'm telling you.
But look at George Foreman's technique.
Yeah, but
technique is not. It's not what really matters. It's the total fighter. Foreman. You look at him and he's awkward.
But Foreman got beat a few times. That's what I'm talking about.
And will Deontay Wilder have Foreman's chin at the top level?
Sorry.
And will Deontay Wilder have Foreman's chin when it comes to it?
Yeah. Well, we don't know, do we? It's another one like Eubank Jr. We don't know.
Well, people talk about Foreman's chin. Foreman got knocked out by Ali. And the thing is, you know, like, is there just a total fighter? Some guys have an awkward style and they can still do it at the top level because of their athletic prowess, like George Foreman. So just because a guy looks awkward, to me, it's kind of here or there, you know?
Well, it is kind of here or there, Tom, because like he hasn't fought anybody of a decent level yet. Once he's fought somebody of a decent level and gets through those fights, and weathers a storm, say like AJ did against Klitschko or whatever, then we can say it's kind of neither here nor there. But until he fights somebody decent, the jury's out, and he's had nearly 40 fights.
Yeah, well, you know, people thought that Bermain Stavern was decent when he fought him, but now he's no good.
Well,
I think there's a lot of it
look
going on.
Yeah, but he couldn't knock Bermain Stavern out in the first fight. And if you look at the second fight, Bermain Stavern was a ghost. That was a guy that did not care.
Yeah, but look, AJ couldn't get rid of Takham without the refs' help. You know, so you can make these comparisons all. Look,
yeah, I mean,
you know, like the best fight in world heavyweight boxing is AJ versus Wilder. Yeah. Everybody knows it.
Yeah,
but you know, that's the fight that's not getting made. We're going to get David Haye before we get that fight.
I don't know. I think we'll see AJ Wilder before the end of the year. I really do.
I don't.
I think you're up.
You don't, Tom?
I don't think there's very much chance of that at all. Because the thing is,
ask everybody else. Sherry, and welcome back, man. Sherry, it's good to see you. Like, and is Jet there?
No, Jet. He's under the weather.
Sherry, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, mate.
How you doing, buddy? You all right?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Do you think we're going to get that fight? AJ Wilder?
This year, no. I don't think this year.
You don't?
Not this year.
Okay.
No.
Whether people get it next year, all roads will lead to Fury versus AJ. It's a bigger money fight, and they view Fury as less of a risk because he doesn't punch as hard.
I don't think they can get away with just keep not making that. Look, Deontay Wilder's getting older. And what is he now, 32, 33? Yeah. He is going to want that fight. That's just guaranteed. Anybody wants to fight AJ, I guess. But, like, I think the way the sort of, like, the media and the sort of, like, the YTBC and everything have sort of, like, started building this fight up in the US, I don't think they can get away with putting that off for another couple of years. I really don't. I think
it depends who they fight, though, Paul. Because if they fight Tyson Fury and David Haye, that will be enough to say. I know a few people in the hardcore will complain about Haye, but certainly the Tyson Fury fight is big enough that if they take that fight, especially if you throw in a Povetkin fight as well, nobody's going to be able to say that, you know, Joshua's ducking that fight against Wilder.
I mean, I disagree. I think they still would say that, especially the American fans. If you look at David Haye, David Haye's falling apart. I mean, pieces of his body are dropping off as he walks down the street. You know, like, he's like Humpty Dumpty, David Haye, isn't he? And then you've got Tyson Fury, who's like about fucking 22 stone, yeah? I think that there's enough angles, especially with the US fans, for them to say, the obvious fight was Wilder. You've been saying you were going to fight Wilder. You've gone on the Boxing Voice, Eddie Hearn, and said, yeah, this fight's definitely, it has to be made in 2018. I think they'd get absolutely fucking slaughtered, man, if they then went and just fought like a David Haye that most people think is done. Let's be honest, he just got beat by Tony fucking Bellew.
Yeah, look, I agree with Paul in what he's saying, that they can't, especially with the whole picture they're painting of, AJ wanting all the belts in this whole road to undisputed. You can't beat Joseph Parker and then delay the Deontay Wilder fight for another 2 years. I mean, yeah. I'm not thinking it's going to happen next or it's going to happen this year, but I think early next year to summer next year, the Wilder fight needs to happen because you can't walk around with 3 of those belts and say I want to be undisputed without fighting Wilder, of course. But at the same time, look, Wilder could very easily lose to Ortiz. I don't think he will. I think he's going to knock him out. But let's say that happens and there's big problems. They might decide to fight Ortiz straight away. But I mean, I think Joshua's got enough of the belts to then, I don't want to say hide behind mandatories, but there are ways to say, oh, look, I've got to take the WBA mandatory next, and I can't, put in negotiations for a unification and all that. But yeah, I agree with what Paul's saying. People will attack Joshua and say he's ducking him, especially the American fans. They seem to think that Joshua is ducking Wilder. I don't think he is, but I think they're just waiting for like Tom said, the Fury fight, that is a bigger fight, and it is, a fight that stylistically is probably, we might say it's tougher for Joshua, but he doesn't hit as hard, so it is, in that regard, it's not a risk. But you never know. But yeah, I do agree with what Paul's saying to an extent. Yeah.
Yeah, my honest take is that in 18 they'll fight Parker and Hay and maybe Povetkin. And to be honest, if looking back at 2018, we say he's fought Parker, Hay, and Povetkin, you can't call it a terrible year. I think in 2019, all roads will lead to Tyson Fury. I think that's the fight that they want. It's the biggest money fight. It's the biggest fight in the world. I don't think they view Tyson Fury as that big a risk, whether they're right or wrong. If he comes through all of those fights undefeated, and that's a huge, huge if, I think they'll be inclined to take Wilder in 2020 because Wilder's viewed as a big risk. I think they're scared of fighters with power. And there's no, they'll be inclined to let Wilder get a year or two older and take on some risky fights himself, like Luis Ortiz, where he could get upset. Who knows what the scene looks like by 2020? By 2020, Joe Joyce could be a top 3 fighter. Daniel Dubois could be a top 3 fighter. These guys could turn into Wembley Stadium domestic fights. It may be that there are ways of dealing with your mandatories and dealing with domestic opponents and dealing with Tyson Fury that turn into such big fights that AJ's career won't be defined by Wilder. Because Wilder's not exactly, for me, he's calling AJ a ducker, but at the same time, he's insisting on this purse split. I appreciate that's just him negotiating, but it gives Hearn a very, very easy way out of making the fight for me.
Yeah.
I think AJ's ego. Look, AJ has shown how big his fucking ego is. Look, all it took was David Higgins to say you've been dropped a few times, use the word flattened, and AJ comes out at a press conference and gets all like defensive and stuff. I think his ego is so big that I think if he was everybody started to sort of like rip him for not taking the Wilder fight, I think he would just say to Eddie, let's make the fight. And let's not make no mistake here. People did it when it was Canelo and blaming Oscar De La Hoya and everything. AJ calls the shots just like Canelo called the shots then. Let's not get it twisted. Like, there's no way, like, if AJ wants that fight to happen, it's happening regardless.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure AJ... Look, if AJ has to fight the Takams and Pulevs of this world, I'm sure he'll be forcing that fight, Paul. But if AJ's got a schedule of Hay, Povetkin, Fury, Dubois, Joyce, a Dillian Whyte rematch, if those are the fights available to him, I'm not so sure the Wilder fight will be as big a deal as some of us think it may be,
I think you're probably right, but I don't think those fights are all that realistic for a couple of reasons. For one, I think AJ wants to stay in the UK for now. I don't think he wants to leave the UK right now. Povetkin, he's got Ryabinski behind him over in Russia. He's making good money there. Like you said at the start, I don't think he's going to want to. I don't see Povetkin wanting to come over here. Although for an AJ fight, it would be different. And Hay, like I've said this since the Hay Bellew rematch was announced, I don't think that's going to go ahead. I think David Hay's done. I think he's done. I think he's totally done.
Yeah, I think Paul's right in regards to Tom. When you're mentioning the AJ and Hay fight, I think Hay is completely out of that equation. I don't think even beating Bellew does not mean or warrant that he should get that shot. Whether he will or not, we don't know. I get what you're saying, Tom. But Hay against AJ is a joke fight right now. Let's be honest. Even if he beats a blown-up cruiserweight, if he's got a better leg and a better bicep and all that business, the point is he's going to be 38 years old. Is he already 38? I think his birthday just went, isn't it? He's 37 or 38. However old he is, he's not exactly holding up very well. And Joshua's too big, too strong, and I just don't see any way that Hay fight happens. Just because he beats Bellew, there's no way he's going to be able to just jump into the ring with AJ next. So I think that has come and gone. Any chance he had of that would have been 2016 when he first came back. And even then, he was too big and he fought that bloody, what was his name, Jajai and Demori. If he was going to fight AJ, he should have fought him in 2016. There's no point in dragging it out now because he's got nothing to offer. That's what I'm concerned.
David Hay fucked himself up because he thought he was going to just jump into the ring with Bellew. He's going to smash Bellew, and then he'd maybe get the AJ fight. He didn't bank on, his body breaking down on him and Bellew actually winning. But like Sherry just said, so say David Hay does beat Tony Bellew, you've beat Tony Bellew.
Mate, it's the casual market though. This is the thing you've got to factor in. Yeah. Like, if Hay comes back if he's 20 pounds lighter and he's moving around the ring fast and he just leaps in and takes Bellew's head off with a haymaker inside 2 or 3 rounds, trust me, that fight is getting made.
Hey,
that will be
you can
a big
see he's a big Hay fan. He's clinging to the glory days, man.
I'm a huge Hay fan, but
the big right and
mate, but you've got to see it from the casual perspective. Yeah. Like, that is a huge fight from a casual perspective.
Yeah.
Like, it really is. It really is.
It is a big fight, just based on name value, because Hay's name is still there. But you got to bear in mind, Hay only came back for that Joshua fight. His whole plan was get in for maybe a year or 2 years, fight a few bums, get the AJ payday, win, lose or draw. I've made a £10 million payday and I'm gone. That's his only real reason for coming out of retirement was AJ. All he ever did is every interview, AJ. But really, we don't even know if he's going to beat Bellew. If he doesn't beat Bellew, then he's retired. If he beats Bellew, it depends on how he looks, number one, and number two, it depends on is he ranked with the sanctioning bodies and all that business. There's other things to consider as well. But I mean, yes, from a pure name and money point of view, it's a massive fight, but it's still a joke fight now. Hay is not. I don't think he's capable of stepping in the ring with a top heavyweight anymore. Yes, he packs a punch, but that's about it. There's really nothing else left until he proves otherwise against Bellew this time.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I get carried away with hype. If Hay goes and beats Tony Bellew and there's a semi-decent post-fight press conference, I could see myself going down to the bookies and placing Mrs. Gossip's life savings on David Hay to win by knockout. Like, the hype for that will be insane. Absolutely insane. Sorry, let me ask you about David Price quickly before we move it on. What's your take on that story, mate?
I think that's if it does happen, it's very ill-advised management. And from what we've seen from MTK, they don't seem to be guys who will, throw their fighters under the bus, if that makes any sense. So personally, I don't think it's going to happen. As well as, like you said, why is Povetkin going to come over here and fight on an undercard when the amount of money the Rubitsky's put behind him to win first bids against Klitschko and Wilder? There's no way they're going to put him on an undercard just because Hearn's saying so. Realistically, when the mandatory comes, obviously they'll try and work out a deal, but there's, again, no reason to believe they're not going to wait for purse bids and push to get AJ in Russia. I would not be surprised at that at all. And the reality is there's no reason why AJ can't travel. Hearn has spoken about China and other places. Go to Russia and defend your title. I don't think Povetkin can beat AJ anyway. So regardless, it doesn't really matter where that fight does take place. But Povetkin and Price would be, I think, it's a very genuinely, I think it's a dangerous fight in terms of David Price's health. At the end of the day, he got stopped by Christian Hammer in last February, and then he's fought that one guy, hasn't he, since? And he's not, he's not getting any younger. He's not getting any better, realistically. Psychologically, he's just taking more damage with every loss, and the way he's losing isn't pretty. So I don't know what David Price thinks he has left or what business he has getting in the ring with Povetkin, a guy who, again, is a convicted, drug cheat, shall we say. He's fought Tony Thompson twice, and he fought Erkan Tepe, and the results all came out afterwards that they were drug cheats. So unless he wants to go down as a guy who's lost to drug cheats consistently and use that as some sort of, use that as a reason for saying, oh, I lost, then there's literally not a reason that I can find in my head from a common sense point of view that you'd throw in a David Price in this current state with a Povetkin, regardless of how old Povetkin is and whether he's looked inspiring in his last two performance or not. It's not the best move for him, but MTK, I think they're good people. I don't think they're going to throw him in there regardless of what Eddie Hearn says.
Interesting stuff. Tom has left us for the podcast, so it's just the three musketeers to close out the show. The one thing that I'd written down on the agenda, guys, just to ask you about was we have the first major fight of the year taking place this weekend. It is one where we have a strong favourite, but nevertheless, I think it's an interesting fight. Errol Spence versus Lamont Peterson. What's your initial thoughts on this one and predictions of how it will break down, guys?
Well, I just see it go into plan. I suppose if Lamont Peterson has kind of like has got himself, into really good shape and is at his best again, which I just don't see happening, then it's a competitive fight. Realistically, it's probably going to be quite easy work. Not easy work. Lamont Peterson's never going to be easy work for anybody, but I see it as quite an obvious pick for Errol Spence. To be honest, I don't know what anybody else thinks. I think Lamont Peterson is probably done. To be fair, pretty much.
Why do you say that? Based on like the inactivity?
Based on how old is he? He's like 30. How old is he?
I don't think he's that old. Do you know, the thing is though, is he's actually coming off 2 pretty decent wins, but he's been inactive after both of them. So he's 33 years old. Basically,
I mean, inactivity makes a difference at that age. You know, like we've seen it time again. You know,
he had 2 decent wins in 2014, Derizon and Edgar Santana. He had the loss to Garcia in 15. But that was a very close fight. He performed with immense credit in that fight. Came back and won a very, very tight fight against Felix Diaz in the end of 15. And then won a UD against David Avanesian in early 17. So no fights in 16. Only 1 fight in 17. And he'll have been inactive for 11 months when he steps in with Errol Spence. Yeah. But I like Peterson. I do. I mean, I did a prediction video on this. It is up on the channel if anyone wants to check it out and hear it in more detail. But I said there's too much against Peterson. You know, Spence is a huge welterweight. Lamont Peterson's been at the lower weight classes. Spence is a knockout artist. Peterson's got a 44% ratio. You know, Spence is in his prime. Peterson's old and inactive. So there's a lot against him. But, you know, Peterson for me is decent. He's a guy who can bring different looks to the ring. You know, he fights very, very different fights dependent on his opponents. I do find it hard to construct a game plan for him to beat Spence, though, Paul.
Yeah, I just think Spence is. I think Spence is the truth. I think he's just like, and he's got the momentum. He's got like you say the age. I think that body punching is going to be quite telling. Like you say, I like Lamont Peterson. You know, he's a talented guy. He's a fucking really talented boxer. Like, you know. But I think it's just a little bit too much at this stage, you know. Yeah,
definitely. Do you think it'll be a knockout?
I've got to shoot off. Did you want to ask anything else before I shoot off, Tom? Sorry, mate.
No, that was the last one, Paul. Unless you've got anything to add.
No. One thing I did want to say though is like. I think we should get behind our fighters a little bit more. It kind of like pisses me off to sort of like just see like English people, British people like bashing like our fighters. I was just noticing like how much places like New Zealand are behind guys like Joseph Parker and everything. I just think it's a shame the way we do that. Like, you know, I'm not a fanboy of anybody. You know, you guys know me. If somebody's got weaknesses, I will point out the weaknesses, but at the same time, I'm still behind our guys, and I just think, you know, we should get behind them a bit more and stop fucking bashing. I think we're the only country in the world like a guy starts doing quite well, like in boxing, and we just start bashing them for fucking no reason. Do you know what I mean? It's mental. So all I wanted to say, but. Yeah, that's me.
You get it off your chest, mate.
Get off my soapbox now. I'll be back for the full one next week, guys. Yeah.
All right. Cheers, Paul, mate. Thanks for joining.
But I'll still join.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
All right.
Right. Sorry, I started with you. Let's finish with you, mate. Look at this. You're making a return after this time, and you're being the long server tonight. Let me just finish up, sorry, by asking you about Spence Peterson and how you see the fight and which way you think it will go.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much you summed it up yourself. Spence, frame-wise, he's too big. He's too strong. I think he's got too much for Peterson. Peterson, look, he's one of those guys, he'll give 100% whenever he's in the ring. I don't think anyone's going to take anything away from him in that regard. And once he gets going, he's a great fighter to watch. He's always in good fights from what I've seen. But I do feel Errol Spence, at this moment in time where he is, even though, of course, he's been inactive since the Brook fight, with the pressure of being the next big star that everyone's throwing on him, he's going to want to go out there and put out, another statement after the Brook one. You don't want to come out and then have a stinker or, go 12 rounds. He wants to stop him, no doubt, as much as I think they're friends as well. But he said, look, business is business, and I want to get in the ring and put on a performance and start off the year with a bang. Spence is a great, body puncher. He's got good combinations. I don't think there's anything that Peterson can do. Even though Peterson has changed his game a few times, we've seen when he's come forward and people like Amir Khan, just head on the chest and start banging to the body and uppercuts and all that. We've seen him fight on the inside. He changed his game against Garcia and showed that he has got a back foot game and he can move around. So he can do a few different things. But I don't think, from what I'm hearing, his coach is saying that they want to just go at Spence and make it an all-out war. That would just be silly, because we saw when he stood and traded with Matisse, what happened there. He got sparked pretty much. So the fact that he's a smaller guy as well, it's everything, like you said, is against him. Spence is just too big, too strong, and I think just that Spence is just a level above right now. And I think he's the best welterweight in the world, if I'm honest with you, at this point. But we'll see what happens on Saturday. But I do think he's going to stop Lamont. Might not take as long as it took him to stop Brook, because Brook is a bigger, stronger guy than Lamont Peterson. But I think he will stop him within probably 6 rounds.
Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Peterson's been very durable in the past. Do you think Peterson will fight a fight like he did against Garcia, where he'll be like the sort of back foot slick boxer? Or do you think he'll do what he did against Khan and try and come forward and put pressure on Spence?
This is the thing with the Amir Khan fight. You kind of know Amir Khan's not a big puncher, so you can kind of take liberties with him in that regard, and you can come forward and put pressure on him. I think with Spence will welcome that. He'll be happy to get on the inside and have a war with someone, because he's a great inside fighter from what we've seen. We saw in the Brook fight he had weaknesses dealing with someone on the outside. Brook's timing with the straight lead right and things like that made it difficult for Spence. But I think Peterson, it depends, isn't it, really? I think if he decides to try and have a war first and he doesn't make it out of there okay, you might think, okay, this guy hits a bit too hard, I need to take a step back and try and box. But at some point, Spence is good at cutting off the ring, and he's got that pressure that he just keeps coming. So I don't think his power is going to be enough to keep Spence from coming forward and trying to put it on him. So I do think he will catch up to him at some point, regardless of whatever game plan. If he stands with him and bangs, he's getting knocked out. If he moves around the ring and tries to box, eventually he's getting stopped. So either way, I see a stoppage, unless Lamont Peterson puts on one of the best performances of his career and does the last 12 rounds. But I can't see it. The way Spence looked against Brook and his relentlessness that we've seen throughout his career, as a champion now, they say it's easier becoming a champion than staying a champion. I think Spence is going to have that mentality that he's got, and he's going to, having trained with Jamel Charlo, that mentality is definitely rubbed off on him. And you see that unrelenting type of fighter he is. I don't think he's going to, show any sort of mercy to Peterson. I think he's going to take him out, regardless of the game plan that Peterson has.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't disagree, mate. I kind of think that Peterson's got different looks, but still, if I was in his corner, I'd find it very, very hard to advise him on how to beat a guy like Errol Spence. And I think if he backs off, Errol Spence will chase him down. If he comes forward, I think Errol Spence will grind him down. And I think Peterson's durable, but I think there's too much against him in this fight. And I think Spence will end up causing a stoppage, being frank. Sorry, that's kind of the end of the agenda, mate. It's been a real pleasure having you back on. Let me just finish by asking you if you've got anything you want to add after, anything you want to get off your chest.
No, I'm happy with how it's gone today, mate. I think we've had a good little chat today, and I'm happy to be back and looking forward to next week.
Fantastic stuff. It's great to have you back in the mix, mate. And yeah, we've had a lot of viewers tonight, over 200 viewers for the last hour of the show. So massive thanks to everyone who's tuned in from start to finish, and massive thanks to Paul, to Tom, and to Sherry for giving up their Wednesday nights to chat boxing with me. So yeah, I'll leave it there, guys. Thank you very, very much indeed. 3 new subscribers since we've been live. Thank you to those 3 new people. Please keep the momentum going by pressing subscribe on the channel, and helping to build things out. Please hit the thumbs up button, whether you're watching live now or whether you're watching after this has been uploaded to the channel at a later date. And yeah, I've enjoyed it, guys. So once again, thanks a lot. And I'll say good evening and good night.